My name is Chris Elliot, and I'm a technology analyst, speaker, and writer, and I'm going to talk about flat organizations tonight. Kick it. Have you ever been in an organization that's been flattened? Why do most organizations flatten? It's bad. It's really bad. And I'm going to tell you why it's bad and what we can do about it. But first, I got a confession. Like I said, I'm a speaker, I'm an analyst, I'm a consultant, I'm not a designer. There's a lot of design gods in this room tonight, so I worship you. But you're going to tell from my slides, I'm not a designer. Most companies claim that when they flatten their organization, they're doing nothing more than connecting upper management with the employees. Liars! What they are really doing is they're trying to reduce their SG&A expense. For those of us that don't speak business, the SG&A expense means that they are removing a layer of people between the people that do the work and the people that do the strategy. So they're cutting out the layers of middle management and tossing them to the curb. The butchers. So, the result of this is that most companies are still left with a hierarchical mindset, but with a flat workforce. So that means if you are in that upper management, you're spending most of your time sitting in boring PowerPoint presentations, staring at some crusty old white guy, wondering why your employees hate you, when you should be out figuring out why your employees hate you. So I have some questions. How many of you work for large organizations? How many of you in those large organizations have seen the CEO in the last 3 months? And why does that matter? Teresa Amabile and Stephen Kramer in 2007, the May Harvard Business Review, wrote a great article called Inner Work Life. And what that article talks about is intrinsic motivations that affect employee performance. And what that means is that you don't need to be physically present, but you need to enable your employees to get their job done. And that means making your employees feel supported. So, are you enabling your employees when you flatten your organization and you're sitting there staring at this guy all day? Probably not. So, I got ahead of my slides. I'm sorry. Do you feel enabled in the workspace? Do you feel that what you're doing contributes to the good of your organization? And do you feel that you get the feedback that you need? Probably not. In 2005, the Harris Poll did a study, and they found that most employees are not feeling enabled. Only 41% of workers are satisfied with their jobs. 44% are glad they chose their current employer. So over half are not. So how can we change this? We have the technology and we have the people that know how to use it. Consider this scenario. You're a designer in Budapest. You get a tweet from the VP in LA that tells you that the technology you need to do your project is available. Then you had some code that you're working on, and a coder in Singapore tweets you to tell you the code's done. So the president in New York sees that work is being done, tweets, kebabs for all. So where does this leave us? How can we apply intrinsic motivation in the workforce today? And that's use technology as an enabler. We actually don't need these organizational structures. We have the tools that we available to allow us to collaborate across time zones, across platforms, across organizations. So we need to ask ourselves, do we need these structures? And are we exploring the technologies available today to motivate our employees? Are we looking at what we can do that allows people to be engaged and allows our companies to grow in these challenging times? So as you leave here tonight, I want to challenge you to not flatten your organizations when times are tough, but engage your employees. Thanks.
Any questions for Chris?